High friction examples. Driving a vehicle on a surface, applying brakes to stop a moving vehicle, skating, walking on the road, writing on notebook/blackboard, flying of airplanes, drilling a nail into the wall, sliding on a garden slide, lighting a matchstick, dusting a foot mat/carpet by beating it with a stick. Driving a vehicle on a surface. You need grip to go ahead, whether you re-driving a car or a large transporter. It is so important that you can't move without it. The static friction maintains the car firmly on track when moving on a dry track, regardless of vehicle speed. The contact area of the tire does not shift relative to the road surface when examined under a microscope and in slow motion. It is merely that when the wheel rolls, fresh components of the tire come into touch with the road. Applying brakes to stop a moving vehicle. While stopping a car, as individuals use their car's brakes, the brake pads initiate touch with the brake discs, generating friction that creates heat and resists wheel motion, slowing or halting the vehicle. It is kinetic friction which stops the vehicle. Sliding or kinetic friction is formed when two items touch and slide against each other. Skating. In ice skating, friction must be conquered for the motion to occur. To accelerate the skater, the leg muscles must press against the blade. Because the blade sinks into the ice, there will be enough friction for it to adhere to it. This is aided by a skating posture in which the bulk is normally balanced slightly forward. So, because friction force is so minimal, the skater will continue to go until he or she creates more friction, by twisting the skate, or hits a wall to come to a halt. Walking on the road. When we walk on a road, we need friction because friction prevents our shoes from slipping. The sole of our shoes scrapes against the floor as we walk, generating friction. This friction stops you from falling by gripping the floor. The substances utilized to create the two surfaces indicate the extent of friction. Whenever the surface grows rougher, friction increases. Friction usually works in the opposing direction of the body's intended or attempted movement. Writing on notebook/blackboard. Whenever we draw on a chalkboard, static friction occurs between the chalk and the board's surface. When we push the chalk with a small amount of force, it does not move. In this case, the applied force is matched by the static frictional force. However, the chalk moves as we apply more force. Because static friction is a self-adjusting force, when the applied force is increased, the chalk begins to move and we can write. Because the static friction would no longer be sufficient to resist the applied force beyond a certain point, the chalk will begin to move. Whenever we write something, the resistive force operates between the chalk and the chalkboard. Flying of airplanes. Friction drag is a type of friction that occurs when an aeroplane is flying. The reluctance of the air along the plane's surface is known as friction drag. The air molecules push against the plane, slowing it down. To reduce drag, the aircraft must be constructed in such a way that the surface area is limited and the trailing edge is smooth. These forms are referred to as streamlined or aerodynamic. When an object travels through air, the air nearest to its surface is drawn along with it, tugging or rubbing against the air it passes through. Once an object is scraped in the opposite plane of motion, friction drag arises. The leading edge is the thin layer of air nearest to a moving object's surface. Friction drag occurs in this area. Drilling a nail into the wall. Drilling a nail into the wall friction is what keeps nails in a wall in place. As the nail is pushed into the wall, the materials immediately surrounding the nail are squeezed. This puts pressure on the nail. This forces friction, which changes the ordinary forces applied by the wall's compressed layers into a resistive shear force. Hooks and bolts might stick to the sidewalls as a consequence of the friction. Sliding on a garden slide. Because a slide is an inclined plane, gravity pulls you down and forces you to slide. There is friction for both you and the slide as you go. Friction is a force that causes items to slow down when they brush against each other. The rubbing produces heat, which is immediately dissipated to the atmosphere. Students who are wearing their bare legs may feel the heat generated by contact between their bodies and the slide. Even if energy is exchanged, it is always preserved. You drop more gradually than if you just jump from the top of the slide, because part of the potential energy you had at the top of the slide is wasted on friction as you go down. To decrease friction, slides are manufactured of a smooth substance. Students can try sliding on various pieces of cloth, coats, and other items to see which materials minimize friction the most and enable them to travel down the slide the fastest. Lighting a matchstick. For the beginning of lighting a match, friction is essential. The match head is rubbed against the red stripe on the matchbox's side. To make it particularly harsh, this strip on the box contains a little crushed glass. By brushing the hard match head on the gritty sheet, friction is generated. In this process, kinetic energy is converted to thermal energy or heat. This generates just enough heat to initiate a chain reaction. Dusting a foot mat/carpet by beating it with a stick. When a stick is used to beat a carpet, the stick exerts a force on the carpet, which causes it to move. The inertia of the dust particles on the carpet prevents the carpet from changing its motion. As a result, the forward motion of the carpet produces a reverse force on the dust particles, propelling them in the opposite direction. Therefore, when the carpet is trashed, dirt comes out. Frequently asked questions (FAQs). What is the significance of friction in everyday life? Because friction is a frictional force that causes motion to be slowed or stopped. Friction is required in many situations where you wish to hold goods or accomplish activities without slipping or sliding, because friction is a resistance factor that slows or inhibits motion. There is a benefit to having friction in some situations. Friction is typically viewed in terms of how things would be if it didn't exist. If there was no friction, people wouldn't be capable of walking, drive, or grabbing anything. Pens and pencils would been worthless in this situation. When utilizing brakes, friction is also necessary to put a car or bike to a standstill. Sharper materials have greater friction than softer surfaces. Sharper materials have greater friction than softer surfaces. That's why sand is used to de-ice frozen sidewalks and highways. With shoes, you can slide as far over the ice as you can with skate blades, see figure below. The rougher the soles of the shoes are, the more friction they create, which slows you down. What is the definition of frictional force? The frictional force is the force that is generated when two surfaces try to move in separate ways in the same way. The primary objective of a frictional force is to provide reluctance to the movement with one object over the other. What are examples of high-friction combinations of surfaces? Glass on glass. The rubber on rubber. Metals on the skin. What can happen if friction is too high or too less? Friction can be used both ways. Icy sidewalk with too little friction can cause slipping, and too high friction among moving parts of a car engine can cause breakout. What produces friction? Misalignments in the materials that arrive during contact with other surfaces cause friction. Such linkages cause friction when the two surfaces are pressed against one another. Friction may also be caused by rough surfaces. A smooth surface has some imperfections, regardless of how flawless it seems. Friction is a restrictive force that arises from the comparative movement of two surfaces that are in touch. Friction roughness of the surface and molecule adhesion has two basic causes. The interaction between the molecules of two distinct surfaces is known as molecular adhesion. Weak interactions connect these compounds. These interactions cause friction whenever the two surfaces are rubbed against one another. Friction may also be caused by uneven surfaces. A flawless surface has some imperfections, no matter how smooth it seems. These abnormalities collide with one another when two surfaces slide against each other, impeding movement and producing friction. As a result, rougher or more porous nature has a higher friction coefficient than smoother or less irregular ones. Please visit our website lambdageeks.com for more articles on technology, engineering, mathematics, and various other domains. Scientific calculator and many more other tools.